If you come to our website, we have a page by which manufacturers can come and say which of their devices can support Chrome OS based on the components we have specified and what changes you need to make to those devices to run them today. But we are working very closely with partners.
Sure. To answer the standards part, yeah, we're working very closely with the W3C, the WhatWG, the Khronos group that owns the OpenGL and WebGL standards to standardize as much of this stuff as we can. The device APIs one you asked about, I'm not as familiar with the details. We're definitely looking at that, and I was looking at some of the stuff the other day. It's still in the fairly early phases, but we're tracking it closely. And with web standards, it takes a while for this stuff to get finalized, and so many of those are still evolving, and we're tracking it and involved very closely. But in general, we want to see all this get standardized and supported across multiple browsers running on multiple operating systems.
Jean-Baptiste Su with the French News Agency. Will you think about having an application store, like let's say like a markets for Android? And what about a driver certification? Is Google going to certify all the drivers that OEMs will have to develop for, let's say, video cameras or cameras? Last question is, what about maybe editing applications? So if I want to edit photos or videos, I can. It seems I cannot do it with Chrome OS.
Okay, so there are 3 questions there. So let me remember and go through them. The first question is, will we have an application store? So we'll have a lot more details to announce in this area. I showed some initial concepts of how people can discover applications. You saw me play a chess game. We really care. The web has great applications. I see every other app platform count the number of applications. The reason they can count is it's countable. In the web, there are hundreds of millions of applications. So our job is to make sure people can discover those applications. So we'll be working hard at solving the problem. Your second question was?
Driver certification.
I can take that. So on testing of drivers and selection of hardware components, we're working closely with hardware partners on that stuff. And we definitely want to make sure that the systems are built with based off our reference designs that Sundar mentioned, with very high quality components, with open source drivers wherever possible. And we definitely have a testing plan that we're working on to make sure that it all works at the end of the day. The drivers are of the highest possible quality. Absolutely.
The third question, I'm sure the question will come up in different forms. So the question is, there are applications today which are not available on the web. And you mentioned a few examples. The short answer is, first of all, we are really focused as the use case for this device. Most people who buy this device next year, we expect them to have another machine at home, right? We are trying to deliver a device, a companion device. It may be your primary device in terms of the amount of time you spend, right? But the goal of this device, for it to be a delightful experience for you to be on the web. So that's the scenario we are focusing on. There are a few use cases where it's challenging. Even in those areas, there are actually alternatives on the web than people realize today, right? So we will be doing a good job of surfacing those applications which can solve those problems. There will be some things which this will not be able to do. If you're planning to spend your entire day, if you're a lawyer, editing contracts back and forth, this is not the right machine for you, not what we will come out with next year. So, thank you. Question?
I'm wondering about codec support, generally a problem for desktop OSs, especially from an open source point of view, and
Sure.
also native client support. Does everything that works in Chrome work in Chrome OS?
Yes. So I'll take the second part first. So certainly everything that works in Chrome works in Chrome OS, and that includes codecs. So the codecs that we've done with HTML5 video codec and audio codec, certainly we'll make sure they work in Chrome OS. And we're working to add support for more and more codecs. We also, as you saw, we run Flash today, and we run the Flash codecs, and are very committed to that. We're also doing a lot of work with codec hardware acceleration. Right? It's not enough to just run it with a traditional decoder. We're also working to hardware accelerate those as much as possible, wherever possible.
And then Chrome native client, are those hardware accelerated that have been built into the whole hardware experience as well?
Yes, so all the stuff that's available in Chrome will come in Chrome OS as well, and we do think native client is an important part of this story.
Yes, and to go back to the previous question, we didn't talk about it today. In addition to the HTML5 capabilities you heard about, we are investing a lot in additional technologies like native client, which will make it really possible for some of the most performance-intensive desktop applications to be written as web applications.
Sure.
So we are working on that. And you asked, will all that is in Chrome be in Chrome OS? That is true. But more importantly, a lot of what you see in Chrome OS will make its way in Chrome. So, and I think that's an important part to realize. On day one, when we launched this, a lot of the capabilities, and if you're an app developer, what we expose will already have well over 50 million users, right? Because every Chrome user will be able to see the applications menu, etc. So I think that's very, very important to understand.
Do you support Silverlight?
So the question from the middle was, will we support Silverlight? So Chrome OS today, users can install binaries on the system. So in the case of certain select plugins, we are working hard to integrate it closely. So we will have a lot more to announce on how we plan to provide for plugins in the future.
But you're working with Microsoft to support Silverlight.
Sorry, I don't have anything to comment on that question right now. Question there?
Yeah, my question was actually about plugins. You've already said multiple browsers will be able to run. So does the browser vendor have to go through you to get on the machine, or how would that work? And then other parties that supply plugins to those browsers, how do they get on the machine?
Sorry, I think Google Chrome OS, Chrome is the OS, right? So when you say other browsers run, so what we have tried hard to do is end-to-end Google Chrome OS is open source. It's free, open, and redistributable. So if another browser vendor or anyone else out there is interested in making a similar operating system with their browser, we want it to be possible. So we are working hard to make sure the code is available for them to do it. But to swap, so that's the way I would answer that question.
Okay, but didn't you say before multiple browsers will be able to run? Isn't that what you said?
I don't recall either of us ever saying that.
So there has to be a certification process by Google first before any other browser will run?
No. So just so that you understand, in Google Chrome OS, Chrome is the operating system. So there is no certification process for another browser to run. The entire code is open source, so someone can take it, put out a version of it based on another browser. So
it's very similar to how things work with Google Chrome, right? So we build and ship and auto-update Google Chrome, and millions of users use that. There's also the Chromium open source project, and many people build their own variants of Chrome called Chromium, and they change it in any number of different ways, and we expect and encourage that, and Chrome OS is exactly the same way. We expect people will do many interesting things with it.
Let's take the next question.
Do you envision the device exclusive or the system exclusively running on netbooks, or do you see a variety of devices using this? And then the second question is, are you able to speak to any of the hardware partners that you have?
So today is the announcement of the open source project. We will be announcing details around hardware middle of next year, since the devices are going to be in the market by end of next year. And the first part of your question was?
So you've spoken almost exclusively about netbooks. Do you see it running on laptops, on desktops, on a variety of devices?
So the question is, we are initially fully focused on, it's a scope issue for us. We want to make sure we deliver very compelling devices. So we are initially focused on what I would call netbook-like form factors. So essentially clamshell with a display, real keyboard, and a touchpad, right? That's what we are focused on. In terms of how we are designing the system, we aren't constraining it. So in the future, we want this to be able to run on laptops, desktops, etc. But we are not focused on that for 2010.
Just to make it easier for our readers, how big is the program, and how does that compare from the conventional software, operating system? So the file size.
So,
it's going to change over time.
Yeah, so since it's an open source project, we have a lot in the code right now to help with debugging, etc. So I think you will see that develop and change over time. The code is out there in the open for people to see. But we are working very, very, very hard to have a very, very simplified code stack. And that'll be clear for developers who can see it out in the open. Thanks.
I'm Harry McCracken with Technologizer. Can you speak to whether there's any level of offline access in terms of whether Gears is part of this? And what happens when I'm on a plane and I don't have Wi-Fi.